Hi, I'm Paul Rudalavage. The title of my talk is Inviting New Members to Our Construction Community by Hiring Lighting Control Programmers. I've worked in the lighting control industry for the past 10 years in sales, system design, project management, and lighting control system programming. When I started in the industry, I was taught the benefits of a lighting control system: energy savings, occupant comfort. That's not what I'm here to talk about today. What I'm here to talk about today is how someone on their second day of work didn't go to trade school, didn't go to engineering school, doesn't know how to use hand tools, didn't have a family member in the construction industry. Someone with no experience can be on a job site, second day of work, having a positive contribution to the construction of a building. That's what I'm here to talk about today. That we can bring people into the construction industry with no experience, and the first step on that path can be programming a lighting control system. Now, why would we want to do this? Why would we want to do this? Well, for me, for my company, we need help. We need people. What's the best way to get help? Just got to ask for it. Got to yell, help! I need help. If you work in the construction industry, have you had trouble finding people recently to fill the roles that you need? A lot of people have, and there's statistics out there to back it up that there is a shortage of workers in our industry. There's one study that says we're 650,000 people short on construction workers. Another one that says we're 100,000 short on electricians. There's another one that says we're 82,000 short on engineers. We're not going to have enough people to build and maintain the buildings that we need in our communities. The way that I'm going to approach that shortage, do you believe it's a shortage? I do. The way that I'm going to approach that shortage, though, is by looking at the work that we do. There's two parts of work: what we do every day and then what we produce. And I'm going to focus on the work. And the case that I'm going to make is that whatever those numbers are, 100,000, 600,000, that there's a shortage there in connecting talent of individuals to the work that fits those talents. And that by hiring them into the industry, we can see if we have that work that fits their talent. That's why we should do it. That there's people with talent for this work that just haven't connected to it yet. So as I make the case that we should hire lighting control programmers as a first step to the construction industry, I'm going to break that argument into four parts. The first part of the argument that I'm going to make is that I'm going to talk about how people are connected to work. And I call that the gravitational stage of work. How we connect an interest in work, the opportunity to do it, with talents that we may have for that work. And I'm going to share a personal story about how I came in the construction industry as well. A lot of what I'm going to share today are personal stories. Work is a personal thing. Would you agree? If you made fun of the clothes that I wear, I might be a little bit insulted. But if you challenged my work ethic or my work ability, that would be something serious. Work is very personal in what we do. So I'm going to share those stories as we go through it. Second part, I'm going to make the case that programming a lighting control system is good work. Third, I'm going to talk about a positive relationship between work and technology in programming a system. And then last thing, I'm going to talk about purpose in work. And that's the motivation that's brought me here to make this presentation. It's something a little bit deeper than you might see at a trade show, but that bringing in the next generation to our work, or somebody that hasn't had the opportunity to connect with meaningful work in the construction industry, who has talent for it, is a duty that we have, an obligation for us to fulfill. So I'm going to share that. So, all right. So how did I come into the construction industry? Well, I graduated from Penn State University in 1999. Didn't study construction. I studied geology. But for some reason, as I graduated from school, I was drawn. I was being pulled, I felt, into the construction industry. That type of work, for some reason, I felt that I would be good at, and it was like gravity was pulling me into that industry. No one in my immediate family did that type of work. I didn't have any specific training or schooling in it. I did one summer on the school maintenance team at my high school, but that was basically just fixing floor tiles and installing air conditioners. But for some reason, I was being pulled into that work. So I got a job as a carpenter's helper building custom homes. So that's how I was going to get my start in the construction industry, and they hired me with no experience. So I remember that first day on the job. Now, if work in an office, you might remember that first day of work. I've done both, out in the field and in the office. They're a little bit different. If you're in an office, you get your email address, there's a coffee machine, fill out some paperwork, you go out to a nice lunch. But first day on the construction site is a little bit different. I remember my first day. So I meet my coworkers. First one I meet is Jeff, and he looks over my shoulder and says, "Is that your truck?" Now I had this little Ford Ranger 2-wheel drive pickup truck, and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you know what Ford stands for?" I said, "No, haven't given that much thought." He said, "FORD, found on the road dead." He said, "Look over there." I looked in the direction he was pointing. I see this 1970s Chevy truck, completely redone, repainted, tricked out, had tires that went up to here. It was a Chevy. He said, "I just put a lift kit on it." He said, "That's a truck. That's a Chevy truck." I meet Steve. He's a little rough around the edges. He rides a Harley. He's always referring to his old lady. It took me a few times of him saying that to get me to figure out who he's referring to. So it's a little bit different. I mean, Ed, he's pretty quiet. He kept to himself. We're all carpenters going to be building this large custom home. And there was Addison. He was our foreman. He seemed genuinely happy to be there. So that was a good sign. First day on the job, in the morning, just move lumber from one side of the job site to the other. Now in the afternoon, we do some building, and Addison says to me, "Hey, Paul, do you know how to use a circular saw?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Hey, no problem. Show me how to use it." But now I'm starting to doubt myself that maybe this wasn't a good idea, that these basic skills to understand how to use these tools, like I don't have it, and I'm in trouble. I'm starting to doubt myself. Next morning, back at work, we're taking a little break, and the guys I'm with, they start sharing stories about how they're working, and they fall off the roof while they're working. And I was like, "Oh no, I didn't think this through. Like, I'm scared of heights. At some point I'm gonna be doing this work. I'm gonna be up on the roof. I'm gonna fall off. I'm gonna die. This gravitational force that's brought me to the construction industry, it's gonna gravitate me right into the ground." So now I'm really doubting myself. The next day, I meet one of the electricians on the job site. Everyone kind of knew each other on this construction site. Meet one of the electricians, and he probably heard my backstory, so he's just like, "So, you graduated from college, is the best work you can do?" And I knew at that moment, like I'm a deep thinker, as you may be able to tell, but I knew at that moment I couldn't say to him what I was thinking was, "Well, actually, I feel like I'm gravitationally pulled into this type of work." So I just shrugged it off and said, "Well, I thought I'd be good at it," and that was it. But doubting myself a little bit more. I remember that night talking to my girlfriend's mom at the time, and about the work that I was doing. She said, "Well, I don't know what you're going to learn by banging these 2x4s together." So now I'm really starting to doubt myself. I don't need to use tools. My truck is lame. I'm going to fall off the roof. Like, this isn't looking good. But by Friday that week, it all changed. I had that moment where I knew that I fit in and I had a talent for this type of work. So we're building this big custom home, and we're working in the garage area. So the first floor above the garage is all complete. It's a big plywood deck, so we have to build the walls up on top of it. So we're nailing the 2x4s together to build the walls. The next step is to apply the sheathing to the walls. And Ed yells over to Addison. He says, "Hey, Addison, do you want me to strike a line and 3, 4, 5 it?" I said, "What'd you say, Ed?" He said, "I'm going to make sure the wall is square with a 3, 4, 5 triangle, because A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Did you know that?" I said, "Well, actually, Ed, I did know that. See, I hadn't thought about it, but geometry was the one subject in school that I did far better than all the others. It just took from the age of 15 to 22 on that construction site on that day for me to realize that this is where it fit. This is where I had the talent from that work." And after that moment, I knew that that was the right work for me, that the world of construction opened up this world of geometry and building to me. And I've been part of that industry ever since. So that's the gravitational stage of work. So lighting control programming, we can offer that same opportunity to see if someone has the ability to connect their interest with their opportunity and connect it to their talents, that we can do that. Before I share that though, there was two more things related to those talents that make it really important in that stage. The first one is that the talent I had was appreciated. See, Addison, he was our foreman. He was a very good builder, very good carpenter, but he also really understood people. So he was very appreciative, not just me, but everyone that we worked with. You know, Paul, thank you for showing up on time, taking direction, working hard, doing a good job. Like that was who he was. He was very thankful. So I recognized I had a talent for this work, but I also recognized that it was appreciated by him and also appreciated by my coworkers. That was part of it. And then the second part of it is that there was visual reminders of that talent. So we'd work on the house all week, shut it down on Friday, take the weekend off. Monday morning when we come back and we look and see, well, all right, house is getting bigger, it's looking better, didn't fall down over the weekend, we must know what we're doing. So there was those visual reminders every day that connected those talents, reminders of those talents. So programming a lighting control system. So how many of you have actually programmed a lighting control system? All right, so what is it? So what are we doing out there? Well, all the equipment is installed by an electrician. We have these little devices, they're called power packs. Usually they're up in the ceiling, they turn the lights on and off and dim them. We have plastic wall switches, some are metal, some have wires, some have batteries. Same thing with occupancy sensors that are up on the ceiling. Some have wires, some don't. The electrician installs all that equipment. So we show up on site to program a lighting control system. The lights are on and none of the switches work. And it's our job to make all this equipment come together and work. So last December, we hired a new lighting control programmer at my company. His name is Griffin. So first day of work for him, he's in the office, orientation. Second day, we're on a construction site. It's a construction of a large dormitory at a college. It's the whole deal, hard hats, vests, we're in there. And the job of programming is we get it at our phones and we're able to digitally connect to the different components in the system. So I start doing it, I show him how to do it. And by that afternoon, he's able to do it. That he's able to make those lights go on and off, dim up and down, the sensors turn the lights off. And on that second day, he was able to recognize that he had a talent for doing that type of work. I mean, let me ask you, would you wait 4, 5, 6 years to see if you have a talent for something? You might, and in certain cases that certainly makes sense, but especially for someone who maybe didn't grow up in the industry, we would want to very quickly know if they had a fit for it. So that second day on the job, you can be doing the work, actually making those lights go on and off. And he was able to recognize that he had a talent for that. I hope that I said thank you enough for it, because we appreciate the work that he does. It's very important to the project, and it's very important to our company. And then second is the visual reminders of the work, because you show up, the lights don't work. When you leave that day, you hit the switches, the lights dim. When you leave the room, sensor turns the lights off. You go back in, it turns on. So that visual part of your surroundings are improving as you do that work, and it's a reminder of your talent. So programming a lighting system is good work. Now, I did a little survey. I know a lot of you haven't programmed a lighting control system. So as I talk about that, I'm going to talk in parallel about a different type of work that you might have done or be more familiar with, to make some of my points about work. Let me see if you can guess what type of work this is. This is taking something unresolved, unfinished, using your hands, techniques, and ability, and creating something finished. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about solving a Rubik's Cube. So I'm going to share that story to make the points about work. My son Timmy, he was, he was 6 years old in kindergarten, and he got interested in the Rubik's Cube. There was that interest. opportunity. I think he got one as a gift or someone gave it to him on the bus. And we noticed he had a talent for it. He could solve one of the sides on his own, but he got stuck with that. And my wife said to me, she said, Paul, you have to teach him how to solve this. I said, well, that's not a skill set that I have. She said, well, you have to teach him how to solve it. So thankfully, there's YouTube out there. And that summer, between kindergarten and first grade, every night after dinner, we'd sit on the front porch. We put on YouTube, and we try to figure out the steps, write them down, and learn them a little bit at a time. And by the end of the summer, we had this. There he is, solving and finishing the Rubik's Cube. So what can that teach us about work? Well, author Matthew Crawford, he wrote a book called Shop Class as Soul Craft, an inquiry into the value of work. So Matthew Crawford's story is this. He grew up, he was an electrician in high school and college. That's how he paid his way through college. He got a PhD in philosophy. He ended up working for a think tank in an office and didn't quite fit in that work. And he left it. Now he's a motorcycle mechanic. And lucky for us, he's a writer. And he wrote this book about work. And he makes some important points of it. He says one of them is about manual competency. And what he's saying is that the ability to do things with our hands, that manual competency, it has implications beyond just being a useful skill. Meaning, if you can install your own electrical outlet, sure, that's helpful. That saves you money. Same thing if you have to fix your clothes dryer. That's really nice to be able to do it yourself, build your own deck. But he's saying there's something deeper there, and it comes from our interaction with reality. And the specific phrase that he uses regarding this is what he calls talks about individual agency, the experience of seeing a direct effect of your actions in the world and knowing that those actions are genuinely your own. So solving the Rubik's Cube, it's your hands, it's your skills, the time that it takes to develop those skills. You can't just pick it up and solve it the first time. You have to develop those skills. And you can take those all the way through to the finished output. So it has that control. And Crawford's saying that that's our interaction with reality, that if we see that we have an effect and those actions are your own, that you'll be more interested in your work and you'll care about your work more as well. Lighting control programming also offers that individual agency. Now, I said on that first day or second day of your job, you kind of have an easy one to program, but not every system is that simple. Not every project goes that smoothly. So if you're assigned to program a lighting control system, you show up on a job site and there's a lot of unresolved things like the Rubik's Cube. There's things that are messy, and it's your job to take all of those unresolved, unfinished parts of the system, unprogrammed parts of the system, and take them through to the other side of a finished system. So you have these things, unanswered RFIs, the owner supplied fixtures that you weren't expecting. The electrician, he's trying to pass his fire alarm test, so he's really distracted that day with your lighting control system, with your little lighting control gadget. The guy that wired the job, he moved on to another job, so you don't have that information. The data jacks for your system aren't installed, and the sensors are too close to the air conditioning. There's all the things you have to work through. You have to, and as a programmer, you're not working by yourself. Certainly, you have office support, other people that you can call for assistance. But it is your actions on that job site to get people to work together, to get the system to work together, and to get it finished. And you're responsible for that, as Crawford states. So, before I move on to my next point about work, I'm going to do a little survey about emotions at work. So, I'm going to put some emotions up on the screen. Inspired, confident, scared, anxious, angry, sad, joyful, happy, bored, disgusted. Which of those emotions have you felt in your work in the last week or so? Which of those emotions do you think your coworkers have felt over the last week? Is it possible in our work that we're too concerned with our emotions and our coworkers' emotions? Well, Crawford in his book points out that we are, and what he's saying is this: that that manual competency, which is so important, it has an objective standard to the output. And Crawford gives this exact example. So I'm borrowing it from him, but he says if you're a carpenter and you build a wall and you and your boss have a debate as far as whether you did it right, you can say to him, it's plumb, it's level, it's square, go check it yourself. And the objective standard is the level, the tools, those other parts of it. So it's very clear whether something is done properly or not. Just like the Rubik's Cube. Is it solved or is it unsolved? And what Crawford's saying is in our modern work environment, that in a lot of ways, we don't have a clear objective standard to what we do. And a modern manager are certainly well-intentioned. He emphasizes that. They're trying to do their best. However, without the objective standard, they're really managing emotions and trying to make everybody feel good, which is certainly a challenge in work. And I've noticed this, going back to the Rubik's Cube for a second, that my two sons, Timmy and Connor, they're 12 and 9. They, like a lot of kids, they fight a lot about a lot of stuff. There's disagreements, there's arguments. They don't fight about the Rubik's Cube. And I believe it's what Crawford describes. It's objective standard. It's either solved or it's not solved. And when you get better, you figure out how to solve it. If you want to keep going in those studies, you do what's called speed cubing, that you try to get faster and faster. But the objective standard now is the stopwatch, and is it solved or not? And there's no arguing related to that. It makes us get along better with us. So if I think about lighting control programming, that is our objective standard, that the lights have to go on and off with the switch, dim, sensors. And once we have that, there's a resolution to our work, and it helps our relationships. And I'll give one example. In addition to the lighting controls that we do, we also program motorized window shades, the blinds that go up and down in buildings. And we had this one project. It was a big project with $1 million of shades. And I went out to program them, and there was one floor I couldn't get to program. It just wouldn't come together. So I talked to my coworker, Neil, who's been very, very experienced, very knowledgeable, knows the technical side to all our work. And we talked about a few things, and the resolution that we agreed on was part of it needed to be rewired. I arrange with the electrician that we're gonna go out there and rewire it. I tell him what wire to order that's the right specification. And I said to Neil, hey, do you mind coming with me? This is kind of a big deal. It'd be good to have some extra support. He said, no problem. So we're on the job. Electrician's ready to wire it up. We're ready to program it. And they unboxed the wire that came, and it's the wrong gauge. It's not thick enough wire. So now I'm worried about these plans. Like, what are we going to do? Should we do the installation? Should we postpone it? We've got to get this going. And I said to Neil, hey, Neil, what do you think we should do? And he looks at me and says, this is your job. You got to decide. And I remember that moment. I was mad because, like, oh, man, Neil, you had a lot of opinions, didn't you, until now, where this one really matters, and you're putting it back on me. Long story short, we got the shades working. And related to the objective standard, there's no disagreement or animosity between us in that moment, because we met the objective standard. They're working. Everybody left happy. We've got that part of it. All right. So let's talk about technology and work. I mentioned solving the Rubik's Cube, that YouTube is there, the video, anywhere, all the time, is a great way to support a worker, to make them better at it, to learn quicker and improve their skills. Now, the other part of it is the actual cube itself. So this is the original Rubik's Cube that I have in my hand. You might be able to hear it squeak a little bit when you spin it. That's the original one. This one is a speed cube. And if you look closely at it, it has little magnets here. So as you spin it, it locks into place. So you can spin it a lot faster. So the equipment is evolving in a way that supports the worker. Here's another type of technology that can solve a Rubik's Cube. There it is on the screen. What is that? It's someone built a computer that automatically solves a Rubik's Cube in 0.7 seconds. It's a world record setter. So it replaces all the work, all the study that my son and I did over the summer, his improvements in his hours and hours of study that he learned, my younger son Connor, it would replace all that. They both solved it. It would replace all that. So here's a photo of all the Rubik's Cubes. What's missing from that photo? It's the computer that solves the Rubik's Cube. Why is it missing? Is it because I won't buy it for him? Is Dad too cheap? It's missing because they've never asked me for it. I don't know how much it costs, I'll be honest. But they've never asked me for it. Why haven't they asked me for it? Well, do you believe that kids do what's natural? I mean, they're 12 and 9. Do they do what's natural? So it wouldn't be natural for them to want to replace this work that they do with the cube that gives them joy, gives them challenges, gives them a sense of satisfaction of completing. They wouldn't naturally do that. And in our work as adults, why would we choose to replace ourselves with technology, with machines? Well, I think the answer is we wouldn't naturally choose that, but at some point we got off track in our work. Well, whose fault is it, right? Let's blame somebody. I'm 20 minutes into this. I know we gotta get everybody back and interested again. 20 minutes. Who are we gonna blame? Let's blame somebody. Is it our generation? Is it the generation before or the one before? Well, for me, I've had some blame in my work life. Let me share that story with you. So my dad, he grew up on a farm. My grandparents were farmers. He grew up on a farm just north of Scranton in Pennsylvania. They grew their own food, made their own clothes. My dad graduates from college, becomes an accountant. He doesn't like the work. He doesn't like being in the office all day doing that type of work. What he really loves doing is being outdoors growing things. But he can't decide which path to take, so to speak, because on the production side of work, he's very good at it. He's a very good accountant, makes good money to take care of our family. But it's also the everyday activities that he has a challenge with doing. Now, unfortunately for my dad, he never got a chance to really resolve that in his life. He's 44. He passed away. He had cancer, and he died. Now, for me, as I went through my work life, I was frustrated. There was some blame that I blamed him because I first of all, he didn't figure this part out, right? But I wanted him to basically leave me all the instructions that I would need to be successful and to enjoy my work life. And finally, when I turned 40, I realized that was unreasonable. Certainly to expect that of him, but to expect that of anybody. So I let go of that blame and that resentment. And what's that saying? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. So almost right after that, I was introduced to this author, a man named Wendell Berry. He's a award-winning author. Here he is getting a humanities medal from the president. So he's an award-winning author, but he writes about farming and the work specifically of farming. And he wrote this book, published in 1977, coincidentally the year I was born, called The Unsettling of America, Culture and Agriculture. And this book is a response to the U.S. Department of Agriculture in the 1960s pushing farmers to industrialize, that they needed more technology, more equipment. It didn't matter how they do things related to traditional methods, that they all needed to change. Mr. Berry, his family lived, still does, in Kentucky. They've been farmers for 6 generations. So this really frustrated and concerned him and angered him. So he did his research and he published this book as an answer to where we were going wrong. That his point was it was our culture that we were destroying, that by removing farmers, we were losing our culture in that type of work, replacing ourselves with technology. And where did we get off track? Well, Mr. Berry says the root cause is our, quote, our attitude towards work, that we started wanting to avoid it, specifically different types of manual work. And he said that we need to embrace it. Mr. Berry says, quote, as a people, we must learn again to think of human energy, our energy, not as something to be saved, but as something to be used and to be enjoyed in use. We must understand that our strength is, first of all, strength of body, and that strength cannot thrive except in decent, satisfying, comely work. That our steps to with technology to reduce labor, it's got us on the wrong track, and we need to recognize that. So, what happens when we do replace people with technology? Well, there's a case study here, right here in Pennsylvania, where I live, and it's this. According to a paper by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, um, in 1960, there was a lot of manufacturing. And by a lot, I would say that 40%, this is in the paper, that's not me saying it, 40% of all people in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware worked in manufacturing in 1960. If you fast forward to 1995, well, let me ask you this. Between 1960 and 1995, before I talk about the people, what do you think the output is? Was it more in 1995? Was it less in 1995? Or was it the same? So it's the same, actually, that over that span, those three states produced the same amount of goods. There's a but, though. Between those 2 years, in 1995, it was being done with 800,000 less workers. Same amount of output with 800,000 less workers. And Mr. Bray pointed this out, that we were making a mistake, and it made sense, and it helped resolve something which I observed in my 20s. See, I took my construction talents and I put them to work in real estate. I decided to buy houses in Philadelphia, little row houses, fix them up, rent them out. I bought and resold some. I worked as a realtor. And working as a realtor, I had a customer that would buy and sell houses at sheriff's sale. Took me to different parts of the city, parts that I had never experienced. I grew up in the suburbs, a town called Ambler, where I live now. I had never been to Southwest Philadelphia, but there I was, South 63rd Street, looking at abandoned factories, boarded up houses, and the visible, without statistics, I could see the poverty of those areas. There are statistics to back it up. Philadelphia is the poorest of all large cities in the U.S., with 23% of residents living in poverty. So I became immersed in that, meeting people that were going through those challenges in those areas, and I connected it to that reduction in manufacturing in those areas. See, if you're a landlord, people apply for houses. You're very in tune with where people work and how much money they make. And I saw the shortcomings, unfortunately, that were there, that someone wanted to rent their house. A lot of people didn't have an income level that would support it. So it was right there, face to face, that I did it. But in addition to that poverty, Philadelphia is going through an epidemic of gun violence. So there's a news reporter, I'm going to tie that back to construction work in a second here. There's a news reporter named Solomon Jones for the Philadelphia Inquirer. He went out to talk to some of the people in the neighborhoods most affected by gun violence. And this one young man had this comment regarding what's going on and why there's challenges in those neighborhoods. This young man says, quote, "Big construction companies, they got nephews, brothers, uncles, all that. Their grandfather went to school and just taught them that shit. They didn't go to trade school and all that. They was taught it. And we don't have it. Our mentors and father figures are either dead or in jail." What strikes me about that quote is two things. One, I can feel the anger and the frustration in those words. But the second part is the specific direction of it. Not blaming banks, healthcare, the government. It's calling out the construction industry, our industry, the one that I identify with, that we let them down. So how do we change that? How do we do more? Well, there's people that are doing wonderful things in lots of communities to bring more people into the construction industry. My job here, my role is to emphasize and increase that message. What's held us back, though? What has held me back? Because I'm here to, in some ways, motivate myself as I motivate maybe you. What's held us back? Well, I think in our culture, we honor geniuses um, a little bit too much, meaning people that have overcome all the odds despite what they're faced with. Someone like Oprah Winfrey comes to mind. Extreme poverty, tough family situation, achieved unbelievable heights in our business that we celebrate that genius. And if we relate it to the Rubik's Cube, see, most people need help. Ian Scheffler, he wrote a book called Cracking the Cube, and he said, quote, to figure it out on your own solution, to figure out your own solution, excuse me, with no one telling you how, you have to be really smart. And that takes some serious brains. But anyone can do it with help. And we just need help. That we just need an invitation to it. That's how I came into the lighting control industry. See, I did that real estate in my 20s and it didn't go well. And I was trying to rebuild my career. And one of the owners of my company knew me, said, hey, we're doing this lighting control thing with Lutron and I can't hire anybody that knows it. Do you want to come and learn it? And I have. And I've been doing it for 10 years. But I was invited. And we need to increase those invitations. The second thing I think that holds us back is we need reminders. We need visual reminders. So I challenge you, buy one of these cubes, put it on your desk, and let it be a conversation starter with maybe somebody that you work with and say, hey, I heard the speaker and got me thinking about how we can invite more people into our work. So we need that visual reminder in our work. So how do we do this? Because it's going to take money, right? That's what we need. We need businesses, universities, corporations, they need to invest the money to bring more people into our industry. How do we do that? We need to find what they're doing already and help them do that. Find what goals they've committed to already and help them achieve those goals. Goals like sustainability. Lighting control programming helps save energy to meet sustainability goals. Diversity goals, diversity hiring goals. The work, anyone can do it to start, so we can hire from a diverse background. STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. Lighting control system, between electrical work, data work, computer work, it's all high-tech work. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you and hire a lighting control programmer.